Over 30,500 kilometers from the nearest continent, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, sits one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth. On this tiny volcanic island, an ancient civilization carved nearly 1,000 giant stone statues, and for decades, people have claimed that only aliens could have done it. But the science tells a completely different story. Europeans first reached the island on April 5, 1722, Easter Sunday, when Dutch navigator Jacob Roggeveen arrived with 3 ships. He estimated a population of 2,000 to 3,000 inhabitants and described enormous stone figures standing on raised platforms along the coast. A tragic misunderstanding during the landing led his armed party to open fire, killing at least 10 islanders. Despite this violence, the Rapa Nui offered fruit, root crops, and poultry to their visitors. Easter Island, known to its people as Rapa Nui, is a triangular volcanic island formed by 3 main volcanoes: Teravaca, the highest point at 507 meters, Poike to the east, and Rano Kau to the southwest. The island covers just 163 square kilometers, roughly 24 kilometers long and 12 wide. It is home to nearly 1,000 moai statues, over 300 ahu stone platforms, and over 8,000 residents today. The nearest inhabited island, Pitcairn, is approximately 2,075 kilometers away. The first serious scientific study of Easter Island came from English archaeologist Catherine Routledge. She sailed from England in 1913 aboard a specially built schooner and arrived in 1914, spending 17 months on the island, documenting nearly 1,000 archaeological sites and 391 statues. Crucially, she interviewed elderly Rapa Nui to preserve their oral history at a time when the population had barely recovered from near extinction. Her 1919 book, The Mystery of Easter Island, remains a foundational text in Rapa Nui studies. The alien theory reached mainstream culture through Eric von Daniken's 1968 bestseller, Chariots of the Gods. Von Daniken claimed the Moai were products of higher technological knowledge than the islanders could have possessed, and proposed that the Birdman cult was a way to honor supreme beings who had descended from outer space. His 49 books sold 75 million copies worldwide before his death in January 2026. But there is no mystery about how the Moai were carved. 95% of them come from a single source, the volcanic crater of Rano Raraku, where the rock is compressed volcanic ash, relatively soft below the surface. Carvers used basalt hand tools called toki, and a team of skilled carvers could complete a statue in 1 to 2 years. Today, 394 moai remain at the quarry in various stages of completion, including the largest ever attempted. A 21-meter giant estimated at over 160 metric tons, abandoned mid-carving. A related myth claims that moving the finished statues, some weighing over 70 metric tons, would have been impossible without advanced technology. The average moai stands 4 meters tall and weighs 12.5 metric tons. The tallest successfully erected moai, known as paro, stands nearly 10 meters tall and weighs over 74 metric tons. How could a small island population have transported these massive figures up to 18 kilometers from the quarry? The answer was hiding in Rapa Nui oral tradition all along. The islanders always said the statues walked. In 2011, archaeologists Carl Lipo and Terry Hunt demonstrated this was literally true. With just 18 people and ropes, they moved a 4.35-ton replica 100 meters in 40 minutes using a controlled rocking motion. The moai were deliberately designed with a forward-leaning center of mass and D-shaped bases, engineering features that facilitate upright walking. The ancient roads, 4.5 meters wide with concave cross-sections, were purpose-built for this technique. Perhaps the most influential myth is not about aliens, but about self-destruction. In his 2005 bestseller Collapse, Jared Diamond described Easter Island as the clearest example of a society that destroyed itself by overexploiting its own resources. In his telling, the Rapa Nui recklessly cut down every tree to build log rollers for moving statues, then descended into warfare and cannibalism as their ecosystem collapsed. But a series of studies between 2024 and 2026 have dismantled this narrative. In September 2024, a study published in Nature sequenced the genomes of 15 ancient Rapa Nui individuals and found no evidence of a genetic bottleneck. The population grew steadily from the 13th century through European contact. A 2025 study showed that Polynesian rats, which stowed away on colonizing canoes, were the primary driver of deforestation. A single pair could produce millions of offspring within about 50 years, consuming the vast majority of palm seeds. And since the moai walked upright, the Rapa Nui never needed to cut trees to move them. So who really made the moai, and why? The Rapa Nui civilization was founded by Polynesian navigators who settled the island around 1200 CE. The moai are representations of deified ancestors, Aringa Ora Ata Tepuna, meaning living faces of the ancestors. They were placed on ahu stone platforms facing inland to watch over communities and transmit mana, spiritual power from the dead to the living. The larger the statue, the more mana the commissioning chief possessed. Recent soil analysis beneath moai at Rano Raraku suggests the statues were also believed to promote agricultural fertility. The real catastrophe that nearly destroyed the Rapa Nui people was not self-inflicted. In December 1862, 8 Peruvian ships arrived and kidnapped 1,407 islanders, a significant portion of the population, to work as slaves in Peru's guano mines. Most died of tuberculosis, smallpox, and dysentery. A handful of survivors who were eventually returned brought smallpox back to the island, triggering an epidemic. Combined with forced emigration and disease from other European contacts, the population fell to just 111 people by 1877, a decline of more than 95% in just 15 years. The Rapa Nui may also have achieved something extraordinarily rare in human history. Rongo-rongo, a writing system found on fewer than 30 surviving artifacts, was long assumed to have been inspired by European contact. But in February 2024, radiocarbon dating of the wood of a tablet preserved in Rome dated it to 1493 to 1509, over 200 years before Ragavin's arrival. If the inscriptions are contemporaneous with the wood, Rongo-rongo would be one of only a handful of independently invented writing systems in all of human history, alongside Sumerian, Egyptian, Chinese, and Mesoamerican scripts. One of the most widespread misconceptions is that the moai are just heads. In fact, nearly all moai have full bodies, torso, arms, and hands. The confusion arose because the most photographed statues at Rano Raraku are buried up to their shoulders in sediment accumulated over centuries. When archaeologists excavated 2 buried moai in 2010, they found torsos covered in detailed petroglyphs, including crescent designs representing Rapa Nui canoes, preserved in pristine condition because the burial protected them from erosion. Many moai were topped with pukao, cylindrical red stone topknots quarried at Puna Pau, a separate site several kilometers from Rano Raraku. Researchers have determined that the pukao were rolled from the quarry and placed on top of standing moai using a parbuckling technique, a rope wrapped around the cylinder and pulled from the top of a ramp, preventing rollback. 15 or fewer workers could move even the largest pukao. Dozens of discarded pukao have been found along the road from Puna Pau, evidence of the occasional failure. The science continues to accelerate. In October 2025, a study in the Journal of Archaeological Science analyzed 962 moai using 3D modeling and definitively confirmed the walking hypothesis. The following month, high-resolution 3D scanning of the Rano Raraku quarry revealed dozens of separate carving zones, evidence that moai were produced by independent family groups sharing techniques, not a centralized authority commanding mass labor. And DNA analysis has confirmed that the Rapa Nui made contact with South American populations between the 13th and 15th centuries before Columbus. Rapa Nui National Park was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1995, covering roughly 40% of the island. But preservation remains a struggle. In October 2022, a fire burned over 100 hectares, including the Rano Raraku crater, damaging dozens of moai. And the Rapa Nui continue to fight for the return of their ancestors, sacred moai, and human remains held by institutions including the British Museum, which has refused to return the basalt moai Ho'ahakanaya taken by a British warship in 1868. The real story of Easter Island needs no aliens, no ecocide, and no mystery. A small community of Polynesian navigators settled one of the most remote islands on Earth and built a remarkable civilization. They carved nearly 1,000 statues and walked them into place. They may have invented their own writing system. They adapted to drought and environmental change for over 5 centuries. What nearly destroyed them was not their own mistakes. It was slavery, disease, and colonization. The Rapa Nui story is not a cautionary tale of collapse. It is a story of resilience.